it's really easy to kind of go down this negative rabbit hole of, gosh, why didn't I think of that?
A lot of people in a work setting don't vocalize that they're struggling with imposter syndrome. Why would anybody want to admit that? But the truth is, a lot of people do.
I think we're always super aware of our weaknesses, but being able to identify your strengths really helps you build more confidence than anything else.
Be willing to be embarrassed. Be willing to say something that may not be okay or may not be perfect, but that risk is bigger and better than the risk of not saying anything at all.
Welcome to The Art of Speaking Up, a podcast that helps professional women access the limitless potential that lies within them. I'm your host, Jessica Guzik, and my mission is to help you find that spark inside you that has the power to transform your career in ways you may not have thought possible. I'm so excited that you're here. And now, on to the show. Welcome to the podcast. I am so excited about today's episode because today I am interviewing two past clients of mine, Kim and Leigh, and we're talking all about the growth that has to happen in your self-confidence and in your leadership skill set when you are in process of transitioning into a bigger role or just stepping into a phase of your career where you're expected to handle bigger things. Maybe you're working on projects that have greater complexity. Maybe you've just been promoted and all of a sudden the expectations are higher. But typically, whenever we experience that type of up level, it stretches us and it feels more difficult than what we were doing before. And that's normal. That's a growing pain that every professional experiences along their journey. And today's episode is a conversation about the pieces that we can put in place in order to manage that transition. Today, I am talking with Kim and Leigh. They are both alums of one of my group programs, the Leadership Lab. This might be your first time hearing about the Leadership Lab. I don't advertise it as often as I advertise my flagship program, the Art of Speaking Up Academy, simply because the Leadership Lab is a smaller program that I only run a couple of times a year. But this is a program where I support clients who are experiencing a transition in their career that requires them to deepen their execution and stakeholder management skills. As we step into bigger roles, we need to get better at building and maintaining relationships with stakeholders, and we also need to improve our ability to execute and deliver projects at a higher level of complexity. Inside the Leadership Lab, I help my clients build these skills so that they can smoothly transition into a bigger role and take on more responsibility without feeling overwhelmed. In today's episode, you're going to hear Kim and Leigh talk about their journey of expanding their abilities as leaders. If you are wanting to be a more sophisticated, more capable leader, and if you're wanting to feel more trusting in your ability to handle difficult things, this is the episode for you. I am so excited. You're going to hear first from Kim about the start of her growth journey. So let's meet Kim and Leigh and get into the conversation, and I hope you enjoy.
I came into the Leadership Lab because I was struggling with a pretty severe case of imposter syndrome. I had shifted industries. I went from really an operations type role into a role in tech within product where I didn't have a lot of formal education or experience. I definitely have a lot of industry knowledge in what we're doing, but the actual tech space is not what my education or background is in. And so I'd been doing this role for a while, and I was quickly getting elevated into leadership roles, and it was very overwhelming. And because it was overwhelming, I really developed this serious case of imposter syndrome because I didn't feel like I belonged here in this position. I didn't feel like I had the answers. My confidence really, really struggled and dwindled to the point where I asked to step back from my position as a leader and focus more on the role and what I needed to be doing to be successful. And how I could overcome that imposter syndrome and really get my confidence back, because I did want to stay where I was and in the role that I was in. But how could I be a more confident person and more confident in my role, and in turn develop into a more confident leader?
I'm excited to get deeper into that and hear more about what shifted. First, we'll learn a little bit more about you, Leigh. I would love to hear a bit about your story and what brought you into the Leadership Lab.
So I've worked in marketing for a little over 15 years in tech and non-tech companies. And I was in a position in my career where I was moving from an individual contributor role back into a manager role. And I just felt like as I was making this shift, I was not showing up in the way that I wanted to. I had had a couple meetings with senior leaders that were rough. Not only were they a little tough, but I felt like I was really beating myself up about it. And so I started reading a lot in a lot of different Facebook groups on imposter syndrome. And I kind of stumbled, Jess, over your podcast. And a lot of what you said really resonated with me. And I felt like I was in this place when the art of speaking up came up that I really needed some outside perspective and potentially like a coaching or group setting to really help me shift my own mindset and show up the way that I wanted to show up.
Wonderful. So maybe we'll first go deeper into your transformation and some of the change you experienced, and then we'll circle back with Kim. So when you think about the ways in which you have grown and evolved during our time, what do you personally feel most proud of?
I'm most proud of, I think, recognizing that you don't have to be perfect to be a good leader and that there's no one right way. I think I was getting very caught up in I have to show up in this certain way and it needs to be very different than the way that I'm currently showing up. And then I was getting tripped up over that. And actually, it was doing myself like a huge disservice. And I think just recognizing that like I could be a leader in my own authentic way and that was okay, that I didn't need to change myself was like a big sort of mindset shift for me.
That's such a good one. How about you, Kim?
Really, my biggest was being able to shift my mindset around when things are getting hard. I tended to go down this negative route where if I didn't understand something, again, my background wasn't in the industry that I'm in now. And so it went a lot towards, oh, I'm not smart enough. I don't have the education. Everybody else around me understands things a lot better than I do. It was really being able to turn that mindset around and shift it towards not always going towards the negative if I don't understand something, focusing on my strengths. We did a lot of like strength analysis during the leadership lab. And I know I'm a problem solver. I can be empathetic, thoughtful, and kind, and all of these positive things that I have to bring to the table. And so being able to have that emotional agility to really shift my mindset towards thinking a lot more positively about how I can solve a problem instead of automatically going to the negative, because again, maybe I don't have the education, but that's not why I'm here. I have a lot to bring to the table. And so it was a big turnaround for me in being able to do that with my brain.
Do you feel like you were initially in a place, because I very much relate to this experience of like something hard comes up or something comes up and you don't understand it. And all of a sudden, like you just forget all of this stuff about yourself that you know to be true. Do you relate to that experience of somehow my brain is forgetting that I'm capable and that there are things that I know how to do?
Oh, for sure. And that was a big thing that I really tuned into too, was giving yourself time to process the situation and to make decisions and things like that. Like when I would have questions presented to me or, we'd be going through evaluations of projects and things like that, I would think, oh, well, why did I think about it this way? I should have thought about it that way. I can't believe I thought about it this way. Like everybody else's idea is so much better than mine. Being able to then take that criticism and not dwell on it, and then being able to turn that around and to make a more positive impact for myself and my team and things like that, that had a very big impact on my mindset work and being able to shift everything. But yeah, I definitely did go towards the negative a lot more than I tend to do now.
Yeah, I think that you're pointing out something really interesting about mindset work is sometimes it's not that we're developing brand new beliefs about ourselves. We're actually learning to come back to things that we already know are true. And I find for me, that's way more impactful because like if I know it's true, it's so much easier to go there. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that, Leigh.
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely agree with what Kim said. And also, like, just embracing that sometimes you're going to get challenged or like that things may be messy or hard or a meeting may go sideways and not to let that completely derail you. I think I was kind of in that swirl a lot and being able to like recover and move on from it faster, I think was just like a huge unlock for me. Like, it's not that nothing's ever going to go wrong. It's not that something's not going to go sideways, but you have to like move on quickly and like take the lesson and just keep going.
Yes. And this can be really hard for anyone who's a perfectionist or really high achiever, but actually realizing that the goal isn't to avoid things ever going sideways. Because I do think anyone who identifies as perfectionist or type A, I think we really have these fantasies of like, okay, I'm just going to figure it out. And then this is never going to happen ever again. But then that creates a whole lot of pressure because then when it does happen, we think it's our fault. So yeah, just moving away from that and towards like, this isn't the goal and it is going to happen. And all I have to do is be able to respond to it. So we'll move into the next question. Maybe we'll go back to you, Kim. Is there a recent moment, whether it was a big moment or a small moment, where something happened that really made you realize like, oh, I've changed. The way that I'm showing up in this context feels different?
Yeah, I had a call with a customer towards the end of 2024 where if I think about, where I was at the early part of the year versus where I was at the end of the year, I definitely had a lot more confidence. I was able to answer their questions effectively while not getting tripped up when maybe I don't know the answer to the question. I will go seek an answer for you. I don't know the answer to that right now, but being confident in knowing that I know enough about what I'm talking about and that they have faith in me to be able to deliver a product that they're looking for as well. Yeah, it was definitely a big power moment for me because I felt like I definitely had turned around from where I was at the beginning of the year.
I love the phrase power moment. Oh my gosh. I'm going to steal that probably. I love that. How about you, Leigh?
Recently, I've had to step into yet another role, backfilling for some folks that are out on our team and some gaps that we have. Similar to Kim, like I don't know some of these areas very well. It can be very intimidating. They are high priority business areas. And I think I just went in with the mindset of like, I'm going to figure this out. Where I think a year ago, I may have even tried to get out of it or say no, but that was not my mindset anymore. And just show up every day and like try and figure it out and recognize that not all of it was perfect. Not all of it is going to go smoothly. And like, that's okay. And then I'm going to show up the next day and I'm going to do it again. And every day is going to be a little bit better. And I definitely could see that shift in myself for sure.
It's funny that you said like show up every day and every day will get a little bit better, because I think one of the big shifts that happens as we become better leaders is we stop using the model that we learned in school to think about success. So like with school, it's like you show up and if you don't do well on the test that day, like that's it, you're done, you're toast. And I think we bring that into our professional lives sometimes. And we put all this pressure that like everything has to go so well, just not realizing that it's kind of a different model. And we have lots of opportunities to course correct. All right, so let's circle back with you, Kim. Have you had either any limiting beliefs about yourself or about what it means to be a confident, effective leader that you no longer hold?
Yeah, I think I've been very lucky too to have confident leaders in previous roles and things like that. And so it just seems that every time I have had a confident leader, they always seem to know what to do. And so for me, it was thinking that I always needed to have the right answer to a situation or have the answer to a situation. And so I definitely had a lack of confidence in having the answer. And so just understanding that you don't have to always have the answer to every single question and that, you work with a team of people. Maybe somebody else has the answer. You don't have to be able to always have the correct response.
Yes, that's a big one. And I think it can be tricky to wiggle out of that. How about you, Leigh?
Yeah, I definitely resonate with what Kim said. And I felt very similarly. Not only did I feel like I had to have the right answer all the time, I feel like I had to, or a good leader should sound smart. And you should sound confident and sound smart and, know exactly the right thing to say. I felt like, oh, well, if I don't check all those boxes, then like I'm not being a good leader and I'm like, can't do this well. Very similar to Kim, like that's not true. And I think I was giving a lot of leaders a lot more credit than maybe is like true, is like in reality. And it's okay not to know. It's okay to not have the perfect answer at the exact right time. And you can still be a leader and show up well.
Yes. So easy to assume that everyone else like knows something or is somehow like doing something differently.
Yeah.
It can be so hard to let go. Like you just think there's this big gap between you and other people. Yeah. Okay. We're going to pivot into tips and advice, specifically all around the theme of leadership. So I'll switch back to you, Kim. The first is just mindset advice. So if there's someone who's listening to this and they're struggling with self-doubt or imposter syndrome, I would be curious, what would be top of mind for you that you would want to share with that person?
I think we're always super aware of our weaknesses, but being able to identify your strengths really helps you build more confidence than anything else. And then you say this a lot through your podcasts and in the course that building confidence is a muscle. And so you can't recognize or you can't build that muscle without recognizing your strengths and recognizing the successes and celebrating the successes. Because even if it's something small, it can go a long way to help you build that confidence and to work that muscle because it's not going to change overnight. You really have to work at it and you have to recognize where you're doing well because you're never going to build confidence if you don't recognize what you're doing well.
Has that been challenging for you to adopt that new habit of like looking at strengths and seeing the good stuff?
Yeah, it has. I think just in the kind of work that I do, there's a lot of critique. And so if I'm working on a project and my team, we're all sitting around and we're talking about things that maybe could change or we could be doing better and things like that, it's really easy to kind of go down this negative rabbit hole of, gosh, why didn't I think of that? Or I should have been smarter in solving this problem, and it's not about that. It's about recognizing what we all bring to the table that might be different and then using that collective voice to make the best decision possible. So it's not about the fact that I didn't do something right or what I perceived as right. It's more about just recognizing those small victories and what did I do well to get to this point. And so that's really what you need to continue that confidence.
Yes. And there's kind of this illusion sometimes of eventually I'll do everything right, right? Eventually
Right.
I'll get to the point where everything's correct and then I'll feel confident. And it's like the actual opposite, where as soon as you let go of that and acknowledge I'm never going to get everything right,
Yeah.
that's when you can actually start building real confidence.
Yeah. I think when you're kind of have that perfectionist mindset, I have it. I know you've said that you have it. It's really hard to not dwell on what you're perceiving as doing wrong. And so that really gets in the way of just being able to show up well and to show up strong.
Yes. And I know it can be a really stubborn habit to try to shift. And for anyone who's listening, thinking like, I get really stuck on things I do wrong and I have a really stubborn mindset and it's not easy for me to see the positive, I would just want to reassure that person that I have quite a stubborn mind. And I would guess that the two of you might also identify with that trait. And so just to encourage anyone who might be thinking like, oh, this is so hard for me to shift, it can be really stubborn and we can still make these changes. How about you, Leigh? What would you say or what would be top of mind for you if you're thinking about someone listening who's struggling with self-doubt or imposter syndrome?
I think the first thing top of mind is that you're not alone. I think sometimes a lot of people in a work setting don't vocalize that they're struggling with imposter syndrome or experiencing self-doubt. Why would anybody want to admit that? But the truth is, a lot of people do. And I think that was one of the biggest benefits of doing group coaching, which I don't even think I necessarily fully thought of going in, but just that feeling of not being alone, of like hearing your story being repeated and just recognizing that like, oh, a lot of people struggle with this. And the second thing I would tell people is you're probably doing way better than you think you are. Like you are probably doing way, way better. And to give yourself credit for that, I completely agree with Kim too. And I know Jesse brought a lot of this too, and like celebrating the small wins. Like every win is a win, even the small ones. And it doesn't just have to be that you nailed this like huge presentation or this ginormous deliverable, because how often do those things come up? It's really about the day to day. And also what Kim was saying to like build that muscle is really what will get you out of that negative swirl.
I love that. I'm obsessed with small steps. And I think it's hard. Like if you have a perfectionist mindset, it is not only hard to embrace wins, but it's really hard to embrace small wins. That's like an even more challenging thing because it's like, no, it has to be huge for it to count. And even that feels hard for me to embrace. So how am I supposed to embrace this little thing?
Yeah.
But it truly changes the way you think as you do it. So it's like, it serves this immediate purpose of, oh, it feels good to notice something that I did well. Like that makes me feel stronger inside.
Mm-hmm.
But the main reason I do it is actually for the longer term purpose of if I keep forcing myself to do this constantly, even though it feels hard, I start taking in myself and my environment differently over time because I've been forced to look for these things for so long that now I'm really starting to see like all the good things I do that I was completely oblivious to for so long. We will shift into the next question, which is also a tips and advice related question. We'll start with you, Leigh. What is one tip or tool or something that you learned in the leadership lab that you feel could be really helpful for someone listening who wants to be more impactful as a leader?
I think one thing that you would say, Jess, that also really stuck with me, because in some ways it's like counterintuitive if you're a perfectionist, is just that be willing to be embarrassed, be willing to say something that may not be okay or may not be perfect, but like that risk is bigger and better than the risk of not saying anything at all. And that has really stuck with me. And sometimes I even think about it in meetings that like, I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it. And oftentimes, most of the time, what you say probably is great or totally fine. And even if it's not, 5 minutes later, everybody's moved on and they're focused on the next thing. But saying your point of view and speaking your mind is definitely worth the risk of maybe sounding a little silly.
Yes. And I feel like it's not always the advice we want to hear. We don't always want to hear that we need to be willing to be embarrassed. However, if we are not willing to be embarrassed, I think it puts a cap on what we can achieve. And so the sooner that we can embrace that, the better. And I think what you're speaking to is really important, which is that it's usually not as bad as we think. Mm-hmm. And even if something we say isn't received well, our ability to bounce back is really useful. It's really useful for us to see that we can do that. So I love that so much. How about you, Kim?
I definitely agree with that. A lot of times for me, at least, it's asking the question of, can you go a little bit deeper into what you're talking about here to help me better understand? And even just learning how to ask those types of questions, because it's really hard if you don't understand something. But I've also found that a lot of times that maybe I'm not the only person in the room who feels like that too. So instead of just nodding and smiling and saying, yeah, I get it. Like, no, please help me better understand what we're talking about or what we're trying to do here, because that will help me be successful in the long run. Who cares if somebody else, thinks, oh my gosh, she didn't get it. Most of the time people aren't thinking that, but you're not going to succeed in your role if you don't understand the problem at hand or, how we can best get to a solution.
Yes, so powerful. So we're going to pivot into the closing questions. I'll start with you, Leigh. This closing question is about the title of the show, The Art of Speaking Up. Anytime I bring a guest on the show, I love to ask them what the phrase, The Art of Speaking Up, means to them.
I think for me, I'm very focused on that word art because it signifies that there's like no one right way. It's not like the key to speaking up or like the rules to speaking up. It's the art, which means like you need to find your own authentic way of being able to speak up that resonates with you and enables you to be an effective leader. And it may look different for different people, and that's okay. That's what it means to me.
Yeah. How about you, Kim?
For me, it's just about recognizing and believing that you do have value to bring to the table. You don't have to speak up and be loud, but you can speak up and you can be confident and you can move the needle. Like you said, Leigh, it's an art. You can do it in your own unique way. You don't have to do it in a cookie cutter way. There's no perfect course out there that's going to define ABC, what you need to do. One of the things I've learned is that good leaders are continuing to figure out how to be a good leader. It's not something that necessarily comes naturally. And so speaking up, it's about building confidence in yourself, but also building confidence in yourself enough where the people around you also have confidence in you as well.
Yes. I love that you said good leaders are continuing to figure it out, because that also really captures the idea that good leadership is about constantly evolving who you are and not sort of viewing it as just a destination to arrive at, which I think can be a really dangerous way to look at our personal growth, because that really brings us back into that perfectionist state of mind of like, I will arrive there and know everything.
Yeah, that's really one of the things that I've learned over the last several months of just pursuing this course and my own self-discovery is just leadership is a continuous evolution. And so I would never want to be behind a leader I've learned that's complacent in everything that they're doing, learning new ways of relating to your team or, how I can be a better leader is definitely something that is meaningful.
Yeah, I'm just thinking it would be so creepy if you had a new boss and they said, I know everything. I figured it all out. I know all the things. I'm done growing. That would be weird. And yet we secretly want that. But then when we look at it outwardly, we can see how it's kind of strange.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will close with one final question. And Kim, I'm going to have you take this one. The context behind this question is I started this show because I had a period in my corporate career where I was deeply struggling with confidence and imposter syndrome and really looking for just a message of empowerment and trying to believe in myself more. And I love to give this last space to the guest to just share anything you would want to share with someone who's listening, who might be in a difficult place mentally and just looking to believe in themselves more deeply.
Yeah. And I was very much in a phase of my career where I felt like that earlier this year. And so I was actually listening to one of your podcasts earlier this year, and it was like earth shattering in my brain. And it was that you're good. Like you have goodness inside of you. And specifically, the quote from the show was, if we can't see our goodness and how much we've achieved, it's hard to carry feelings of confidence that last and sustain. I had never really thought about the goodness that I have. I knew that I was good at things. I had strengths, but overall, the goodness that I have inside of me to be able to carry feelings of confidence, I'd never really thought about it like that. That was the start of the shift. And once I could recognize the good that I have and the good that I carry with me, once you can recognize that is where you can really start to turn around and start to build that confidence.
Oh, that's so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you both so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this interview, and a big heartfelt thanks to Kim and Leigh for so boldly coming on the podcast, being willing to be interviewed and sharing their experiences. One of my absolute favorite takeaways from this conversation is the idea that the leadership ability is already inside of us. And one of our number one jobs as women and as leaders is to get better and better at reminding ourselves of that during the moments when our confidence is shaken. I think a lot of times when that happens, it's really easy to go to a place of questioning ourselves and second guessing whether we're capable. And it's in those moments where it is most important for us to shift that pattern and to normalize the experience of struggle or the experience of things not going perfectly, and to actually use that as an opportunity to double down on our belief that we are competent, capable leaders who can thrive not only when things are going smoothly and things are feeling amazing and easy, but also during moments when things are challenging. And that's exactly what a leader is expected to do. A leader is someone who can rise to the occasion and believe in their ability to create results, even when things are difficult. This conversation was such an empowering reminder of that. So thank you so much, Kim and Leigh, for reminding me and reminding all of us of that. And to anyone listening, if you are interested in developing your leadership skill set and you want to work with me inside the Leadership Lab to build the confidence and the leadership skills you need to really be able to handle bigger roles, bigger titles, and bigger projects, I want to invite you to add yourself to the waitlist by going to jessguzikcoaching.com/leadership or by clicking the link in the show notes. Once you add yourself to the Leadership Lab waitlist, you will be first to find out when I open the next cohort. Because this is a smaller program, I often don't advertise it super broadly. So if you're not on the waitlist, you may not hear about the next enrollment period. So I strongly recommend adding yourself so that you don't miss out. That is jessguzikcoaching.com/leadership, and the link is in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here, and I will catch you in next week's episode. Bye.